Hello, Geomorphology students. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of Lab 4 and kind of what was done to process the GIS data to produce a river-long profile along the Spanish Fork and Diamond Fork rivers, um, where we'll be studying both the river profile, um, also river terraces that you find along the river, and you guys will be measuring things such as sinuosity, uh, channel width, and mapping some geomorphology along the river. Okay, so you'll see this Word doc in the lab. So for Lab 4, and basically there's sort of two parts. So you're going to do kind of broad scale fluvial processes, discuss how that's expressed in channel long profiles. And then part 2, you're going to do some of your own mapping of geomorphic surface and assessing channel form in map view. Okay, so I've provided for you a river long profile, both pasted as kind of an image within this Word doc at the end, and then also as an attachment as a separate PDF. So in this video, I'm going to go over that and show you what's there, and also relate it back to the GIS and how that was produced. And so basically, as a part of that, I have a kind of ArcGIS Pro starting point for you all if you need to look at some of the details and as you measure some of these attributes. And then I want you to know what's in there. And so part of that is going to be the river profile itself. And I'll tell you how I was able to add in some information about uh, the profile, as well as where the terraces are located and where 11 sites that you will be analyzing in this lab are located along the river. Okay, so first, so what you need to do is describe below. There's kind of question 1, where you kind of go through each NIC zone along the river profile. So I'll just show you quickly the river profile down below. And remember, these NIC zones are these sites for changes in curvature along the river. So I see kind of definitely one down here, one here, something strange going on there, and another NIC zone here, and possibly something up further. And then yeah, so you're going to analyze those in terms of what's going on with the geology. And so to do that, you'll probably want to bring in and open up on a separate diagram or a separate screen the Utah Interactive Geologic Map, so you can see where you are and what the geology is doing. But then also you want to look just at the hydrology of your system and think about, are there rivers joining? Changing stream power, things like that. Yeah, so you'll analyze those NIC zones and you can present your findings below in either paragraph or tabular format. In question 2, I'm encouraging you to use tabular format here. So at each of the sites, and not all of them are NIC zones, but each of the sites that I've highlighted in the GIS, there's 11 of them, please assess the following channel attributes. You'll measure the width of the channel, the sinuosity of the reach, and so for that, you'll kind of want to go over like a 1 kilometer length of the river nearby that site and figure out how sinuous it is. You will also write down the channel's elevation at this location, and then the elevation of the floodplain, any other Holocene terraces located there, the lowest Pleistocene terrace, if it's located there, so the Provo level, and the Bonneville level, and then tell us how far upstream we are along the profile. And so all that information in terms of the elevations and distances can be found within the attribute tables of the different data sets within the GIS. And then within that table, you're going to describe the channel width variations across the level 11 sites, and tell me what you think might be controlling why there's variations in width of the channel. Is it somehow related to kind of progressing downstream, or something going on with the sinuosity, etc. Number 4, please describe the river sinuosity across those 11 sites and assess whether or not it classifies as straight or meandering at each of the sites, or just generally. And if it does vary, in some places you'd call it straight, in other you might call it meandering, please describe why this changes. So talk about that with your group. And number 5, please describe how the Holocene terraces change in elevation downstream from site 11 to 1. Are there differences in elevation uh, that are similar or different to the pattern of the current channel's elevation? So for that, you're going to want to look back at the river profile. And so then it asks the same sort of thing about the Provo and Bonneville terraces. And then, yeah, so here we are. We're looking kind of at kind of the river profiles here. The last question, number 7, is related to, I'll make a separate video that I'm going to paste the link into this document and show you an example of how you could map the location of river terraces using GIS. And the last product for this lab is for you all to go to site 5, I believe it is. Actually, let's check on that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it's site 6. So you go to site 6, which is called Diamond Fork Terraces, and you're going to create a geomorphic map as detailed as you can reasonably make for the site. And so you probably want to go up and downstream a kilometer or so from where that site is located. And you're going to depict the channel, Holocene terraces, Pleistocene terraces, any small fans you see. It can also highlight cultural features. And then in the end, you'll present your map with symbology, north arrow, scale, and a title. And then also provide a detailed caption that can be on the map itself or can be entered here in this document. And then if you need to annotate your map, please do so. Okay, so let's look at this river profile. So here's the PDF version. I'm going to pull up ArcGIS as well. So the river profile is the black line that you see here. And we can see this is downstream. Meter 0 starts kind of where the channel enters Utah Valley. And so this is Spanish Fork right here. Spanish Fork keeps going up there, but this river profile then veers up Diamond Fork and continues quite a ways up till we get into a very confined channel kind of canyon system where there's no alluvial width to the valley. So that's the length of the river profile that you have, and here it is shown down here. That's been transferred onto this diagram, which has been produced for you. And then each of the 11 sites, site 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 are plotted with these kind of orange arrows below the profile. Above the profile, we have dots and symbols. Gray dots are the locations along the river profile and elevations above the river profile of the youngest Holocene terraces at nearby each of the sites. And then also where there were other Holocene terraces, they're plotted in black, although I'm not sure that they exactly correlate to each other. And so then there's been a kind of trend line added to the Holocene terraces as like a profile line or trend line sitting sort of above the modern river terrace. And so you can see how that corresponds to what we see in terms of the modern, river channel. So how does that river trend line of those prehistoric terraces match with the current river profile. And so we have the same thing for the Provo level of terraces. And so that's my interpretation that these are Provo surfaces based upon my finding them out near the mountain front and then finding them at each site moving up through. So hopefully you believe me. And then on top of that, we have this blue trend line. And so you can see the kind of curvature shown there and how that relates to the modern river profile. You can see there's a weird incision thing that's going on here relative to that trend as we move past site 2 down to site 1 towards the valley. And then above that, we have this in green diamonds, what I interpret to be the elevations of the Bonneville River terraces and that trend line through them. And then above that, some older river terraces and a trend line through them. There are many other river terraces. I only mapped samples of these that were nearby each site to try to give you a general idea of what's going on. How those prehistoric river profiles that can be kind of inferred from the trend lines might compare with today's river profile. So use this diagram to discuss that. Let me show you a little bit about how these data were made. Okay, so I'm going to pull this open over here. So in your GIS data, you're going to have kind of your Spanish Fork watershed, basically, which you created from Lab 3. The bounds are shown here with this black line right there. And then Lab 3, you guys did a bunch of GIS processing, and that was primarily done using kind of coarse resolution DEM. I think it was either NAD or SRTM, probably SRTM. In this lab, for this river profile, I've used a LiDAR data set from the late 2010s. I think it was 2018, if I remember correctly. And so I kind of basically cut that river data set out along the alluvial river valley of Spanish Fork and Diamond Fork. Now, note that there's not a very wide alluviated valley. It's pretty narrow because we're up in the mountains here. And it becomes narrow as we get further up. So it is, there is some alluvium here, but maybe over like geologic time, it's might think of it more of as a bedrock channel. Okay, yes. So then what are these sites and what about this river profile? Okay, so come on, GIS, let's load up. Okay, so you can see that there's these little dots. And then there's some big dots. The big dots are the gauges that you all plotted in last week's lab where you were looking at hydrographs upstream at Diamond Fork and downstream at Spanish Fork, remembering that this is a very managed system, so the hydrographs don't look quite perfect in terms of downstream gaining or anything like that. Okay, I'm going to turn on the site labels here so you can label the sites. And in the GIS files that you'll have, you're going to have quite a few of these almost like repeating data. So the sites 2023 was the original thing I made. Basically, I put a site at the mouth of the river, one site at a dam that's located along the river, which you probably will find that's sitting basically at this first Nick zone. And then upstream, we have site 3 where this Sterling Hollow, these other streams meet. Site 4 is where Shirts Canyon meets. Site 5 is where the Diamond Fork crosses Highway 6. Site 6 is this beautiful set of wide river valley and terraces in the lower Diamond Fork section of the stream. Then site 7 is where you have these two channels meeting at what's called Lavender Hollow. Site 8 is at what's called Brimhall Canyon, where there's a prominent drainage that meets. Site 9 is at Little Diamond Creek's junction with Diamond Creek. Sam's Canyon is, oh, this is supposed to be site 10, not 11. And then lastly, Monk's Hollow is right below the junction of the diamond, or the location of the Diamond Fork gauge. Okay, so then you'll see that there are these little polygons that were created at each of the sites, and those are my little river terrace mapping project. So here at site 3, I mapped an example low terrace corresponding to the floodplain, Holocene River Terrace, in this light tan. And then we get this yellow terrace. I interpreted that to be Provo, and this higher surface to be Bonneville. And so you'll see this pattern as you move up through the system. And so if we go back over here, you'll see that I've given elevations for these sites. And the way I extracted these terrace sites elevations is basically I converted those polygons into points. And then I used something called linear referencing tool and basically located where those points sit along this river profile, starting from the valley upstream, so that I could then plot them in the X position. And then in terms of the Z positions, I used some tool called zonal statistics to calculate the elevation of the DEM at those points. Actually, not at those points. I calculated it. You'll see if you open up the Excel chart, which is located in a folder in the shared drive. I actually did zonal statistics on the whole polygon. So you'll have a range of elevations from a min to a max across that polygon. And they also have a mean, and I've plotted the mean elevations, I believe, in terms of these points that you see on the profile graph. Okay, so yeah, that's where each of these terrace point elevations come from. Ideally, I guess I would have also shown the error bounds, the min and max of the terrace, and that would help see if our trend line plotting through that. Haven't done that, but you could do that if you wanted to. The Excel file's there. And then what else? Oh, yeah, so how did I get elevations along this profile? So basically what I did is I turned the river line into something that's called a polyline Z. So I extracted the river line like you all did last time to kind of map rivers throughout the drainage network and create the watershed. But instead, I then selected just the trunk stream of these two streams and merged it into one line file. So there's no kind of separate joints and sections. And then I used a tool which is called basically intersection. It intersects the feature classes, such as a line, with the raster surface. And so I intersected it with the LiDAR DEM so that I could get elevations all along that line from the valley upstream. And so that's how we get that profile. From there, I also turned that into what's called a route, and I matched it so that it started at the valley and went upstream in terms of distance. And then I located the sites, which are the dots on the stream, and the terraces in terms of terrace points, but matching those polygons for where they fall along the stream as well. Okay, so hopefully that helps you understand where this data is coming from that you have here. Please check out my next video which will talk about going to Site 6, which is located here, and trying to map the geomorphology. Actually, I'm going to take you to a different site, maybe downstream, to map the geomorphology down there a little ways. And so then you can do it yourself at the other site, Site 6, the site of interest. Okay, thank you. And hopefully this helps you get started with the lab.